And we are live. Welcome, everyone. You're watching Hard Targets, bringing you the news from a multipolar world. This is Teray. We're sort of live. I'm pre-recording this and scheduling the stream for a later date because technology is awesome. But I wanted to elaborate a little bit on a point I made yesterday in a stream for my new show with the Yankee Tanky called The Barracks. So I highly encourage you to go watch that stream from yesterday. You can also follow that Twitter account at The Barracks Live. We have the capability to stream straight to the Twitter page. So you don't even have to leave the new rebranded Twitter X to be able to catch all of the content for that new show. But at the end of that stream, I made the point that I believe any revolutionary movement in the United States will move away from this 2016 era populism, because populism is, as I've said on Twitter, a movement focused purely on reforms and not on authenticating power that already exists organically at the local granular level in people's institutions, in schools, in churches, in factories, in the nuclear family, etc. Just on reforming federal policies to alleviate the pressure on these organic institutions of people's power. So I think we've come up against the end of populism, and so any politicians within the American states that want to counter deep state hegemony will have to find some new organizing principle to do that, because the federal government, specifically under the Biden regime, is ramping up its federal crackdowns of local institutions. Populism can only go so far in alleviating, pressure from climate lockdowns, alleviating pressure from, the pronoun people and their agenda to indoctrinate your kids. I've argued in that stream that it's going to be a movement that is already being led by the National Guard at some point, specifically in Texas against the border invasion, but that has the potential to grow in an effective and legal capacity for leading a people's movement at the granular level, not just some federal universal reform. I have a article pulled up that I wanted to read from the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos's new paper. Allegedly, he's spending a lot more time trying to be involved in the Washington Post, which articles like this, it makes sense. About not climate lockdowns, but about heat strikes. I've been seeing a lot of hand wringing about, let me pull it up here. I've seen a lot of hand wringing about heat waves from congressmen, from senators, and people in governments. Like Hillary Clinton's Twitter account saying, do you like this new heat wave? You can thank a Republican for the heat crisis, for daring to use fossil fuels, that kind of sentiment, this degrowth sentiment that we need to gut what's left of industry in North America, depopulate in order to stop putting in greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, ignoring the fact that would kill millions, if not billions of people. It's for Mother Gaia. It's for the endangered pandas. Personally, I say fuck the pandas. People are more important. But that's the trend. I'm sure you've noticed it. The Washington Post is showing this example of the federal government reaching to stifle state state powers of governing how they see fit their industry, specifically in this case, construction in Texas. Uh, Texas has, like everywhere else, been in the middle of record heat, and so it's affecting people who are working outside, construction workers in this case, but also farmers, even pedestrians in their homes who might not have adequate air conditioning. What the Washington Post wants to, well, yeah, let's read the article here. I'm stalling. The article is Lawmaker Leads Thirst Strike After Texas Strips Protections on Water Breaks. The heat stroke Fernando Arista suffered still weighs heavily on his mind. It's always leading with pity. They want you to get you to stop thinking critically about material solutions and compromises and just feel bad for Fernando Arista, who might not even be real. But it took the electrician 3 days to recover from an episode in the scorching Texas heat that left his muscles limp, his head throbbing, and his mind disoriented. All because he was denied a water break on the job, he said. That was last year. But now, as a brutal heat wave sends Texas temperature soaring into the triple digits, Arista said he fears other workers will suffer the same fate, especially after Governor Greg Abbott signed a law last month that will remove construction workers' mandated 10-minute breaks to drink water and rest in the shade. More people will suffer and some will die, and it's because Republicans decided to take away a basic right and because workers are not protected from these extreme conditions we face all over the country, Arista said from Capitol steps, where dozens of workers and labor organizers gathered on a steamy Tuesday afternoon to call on the Occupational Safety and Health Administration to swiftly implement the nationwide workplace heat standard. Abbott's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Dubbed the Death Star bill by critics, HB 2127 prevents cities and counties from creating legislation if it clashes with state laws. It also overrides existing ordinances. Proponents of the bill have touted it as a means to streamline business practices in Texas by having a single set of regulations, but opponents argue it's the latest effort by a Republican-led legislature to undercut local governments and put workers in harm's way to boost profits. So we can already see the contradiction here. Not just that Texas is allegedly battling local sovereignty of the cities, but that you can see where this is leading, where the federal government, the federal Democrat-led parts of the government should intercede on Texas's local organizing efforts. You see the contradiction there. The federal government stepping in to impose climate delusion onto the state level. Not saying that Greg Abbott is some sort of revolutionary figure. He's not. But the proposed solution here, we should not take for granted the proposed solution here when given to us by Jeff Bezos's The Washington Post. So to continue, the 8-hour protest the 8-hour protest representing the time of a typical work shift was led by Representative Greg Kasser, a Democrat from Texas who refused to drink water during that time in an effort to highlight the lack of protections for workers during extreme heat waves, which are becoming more common and costly because of human-caused climate change. Again, to go off on a tangent for a little bit, we saw this kind of childish behavior also in Tennessee for the banning of child mutilations. I think that was the legislation that was being passed. That 3 congressmen from Tennessee were voted out of the House, out of office, because of how rowdy they were getting in terms of bringing these protests into the government building. So this childish behavior of, you got to protest for the little guy. coming from state representatives, rather than doing their job, they just want to hold their breath until they get what they want. This case, almost literally, just refusing to drink water until the federal government steps in to impose its will on the state of Texas. So this is the guy calling for the thirst strike. It was not Kasser's first thirst strike. Before he was elected to Congress in 2022, he was with the Workers' Defense Project, a Texas-based nonprofit that advocates for the state's low-wage immigrants. That, again, there it is. There's the immigrant thing again. This is to facilitate the sympathy for illegal immigration, not stopping it, but having sympathy for the illegal immigrants. Let them over here. The immigrants just need water. They don't need to stay in the country where they were born. They just need to come here, take up all the construction jobs, and they just need water. They're thirsty, man. So letting that slip in there to continue. There, he helped organize a thirst strike in 2010 that resulted in Austin implementing a water break ordinance. In 2015, a similar thirst strike led to Dallas doing the same. Those gains, however, will be erased come September when Texas's law overriding local workplace ordinances goes into effect. Kasser, so yeah, you see when the state of Texas is rolling back these protest, these childish protest laws, specifically that were put in place to benefit illegal immigrants. Suddenly, the federal government needs to intercede. Funny. Kasser, some 7 hours after his last sip of water on Tuesday, said he remained hopeful. We won in 2010 and 2015 by having a thirst strike, he told the Washington Post. And now in 2023, we've had another thirst strike that I think is what's going to propel Congress and the White House to enact federal heat protections. Federal heat protections. So here's Kasser again, convincing a bunch of people in the state of Texas to take seriously his temper tantrum. Around the country, this summer's sweltering heat has left people hospitalized from burning pavement and scalding hoses. In Louisiana, juveniles have reported getting extremely hot in prison cells where they have no air conditioning. Reported getting extremely hot. You remember when people like the Washington Post used to report people getting symptoms of a certain plague? It wasn't the flu. It was the plague, allegedly. But yeah, reported being extremely hot in the middle of summer. Go figure. More than 100 migrants died from heat near the border. There it is again. 100 migrants died from this climate crisis. The heat is killing all the illegal immigrants. And workers across the nation have continued to toil under the dangerous conditions. So you have the pairing there between illegal immigration and workers. The illegal immigrants are the workers. They're the backbone of labor in this country, and they're dying because of the heat, which is a stupid assumption for many reasons. But to continue. Still, there's no federal standard for outdoor workers exposed to extreme heat, meaning it's up to states and their labor departments to issue workplace mandates. I didn't see Kasser going to Greg Abbott's office to implement Texas Texas state heat legislation. No, let's go straight to the federal government. 3 states, California, Minnesota, and Oregon, have permanent statewide heat standards in place. Washington state implemented emergency heat protections with its labor department still drafting permanent regulations. Yet similar bills in Florida, New York, and Nevada haven't passed in recent years. In February, attorneys general in New York, California, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania sent a letter to Douglas Parker, who leads OSHA, urging the implementation of an emergency temporary heat standard, citing how climate change is, quote, spurring longer, more intense, and more frequent heat waves that are harmful to workers' health. An OSHA spokeswoman did not immediately respond to a request for comment. On Monday, more than 100 members of Congress signed a letter to the Department of Labor calling for federal regulations requiring employers to provide adequate hydration, rest breaks in shaded areas, and medical services to address heat related symptoms. Urgent action is needed to prevent more deaths, the letter stated, citing the recent deaths of 2 workers in Texas. President Biden ordered OSHA in 2021 to begin drafting heat-related employer guidelines. So we're already seeing this happen in the works for at least a year. Ana Gonzalez, Deputy Director of Policy and Politics for the Texas chapter of the AFL-CIO, the largest federation of unions in the country, called the lack of federal regulations inhumane, being inhumane to illegal immigrants. So that's, not to belabor the point, but that's who they're talking about, especially in terms of construction in a state like Texas or in a place like Florida, where Ron DeSantis had to pass a whole bill to have a work freeze in construction sites to be able to do background checks on people if they were legal citizens, because so many of them were not. So that's even if they don't say it, that's who they mean. We don't need guidelines. We need requirements. We need enforcement, Gonzalez said. We need enforcement, Gonzalez said. On Tuesday, hope mingled with grief on the Capitol steps, where the lack of trees offered no reprieve from the afternoon heat. Oh, poor Congress crybabies. No, not enough trees. A thick black frame displayed a photo of Roendy Granillo, who died of heat stroke in 2015 while working construction. More than a dozen candles surrounded his picture, along with a bottle representing the water break Granillo's boss is accused of denying him before his death. So, very much of the same, political theater, much of the same protest theater that we've seen over the past decade. A deep state of theater kids. That's what we have running Congress. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez is the star of the cast of the theater kid deep state. The deaths and the long-term organ damage extreme heat can provoke on the body are completely preventable, said Lindsay Spinney, a nurse who flew to DC from Austin to aid the protesters. Nearby, Eva Marroquin just happens to take a $300 plane ticket to DC from Texas to just aid, out of the goodness of her heart, the protesters. I'm sure she wasn't paid for just to stage this incredibly hokey protest. Nearby, Eva Marroquin, a construction worker from Austin, clutched a sign reading "People over profits." "Working shouldn't be a death sentence," she said in Spanish, "but I don't have a choice. I'm a single mother of 5. So the way I see it, I can either expose myself or not pay my bills. I just think we deserve to be treated like humans," Marroquin added, her eyes filling with tears. Ugh, single mother, crying. "Please let it override your judgment." Around her, cheers in Spanish and English broke out. How do you cheer in Spanish, by the way? He cheered Spanishly. God, liberals are so dumb. Around her, cheers in Spanish and English broke out as other lawmakers, including Democratic Representatives Jamie B. Rashkin, Maryland, Ilhan Omar, there she is, Eric Swalwell of California, Cory Bush of Missouri, I think Emma was Missouri, and Joaquin Castro of Texas passed by to express their support. Again, the troupe of the theater kid deep state. All names you should recognize here. At 6:50 p.m., as the sun began dialing down and a cool breeze intercepted the heat, Kasser took his first sip of water since 10:25 a.m., a drink blessed by Texas-based Reverend Jim Rigby. "I feel more hopeful and more inspired and better after 8 hours," he said, before drinking from a glass and then sprinting up the Capitol steps. So there you have it from the Washington Post. I made sure to give an email address to the Washington Post to be able to read this article for free, so I could pass it on to you, so that you can see what I'm talking about. This ramping up of federal intervention at the state level of organizing and legislating at the state level to and these states looking out for their own interests. Like I said, is Greg Abbott looking out for the interests of Texas Americans as a whole? No, he's looking out for the interests of Texas businesses. But there is another way forward here that doesn't lead to these federal crackdowns. It's because it's going to get hot outside. Like I don't know why Congressman Kasser throwing a tantrum and not drinking water is going to stop it from being hot outside. The federal government interceding in cracking down on Texas, because Biden has already been interceding Texan sovereignty by sending National Guard troops from other states to interfere with the Texas National Guard from securing the border, where the Texas-Mexico border, where illegal immigrants from dozens of different countries are just flowing over and trampling over their efforts to put up fences, to send back migrants. So there's already a huge effort to trample on Texan sovereignty. So the way forward here is not, this Republican solution of gutting OSHA regulations and just making it easier for businesses to squeeze excess labor from workers. And it's not the Democrat mealy-mouthed solution to give more benefits to the worker, because that also sucks. Still, working outside in 110-degree heat, but you have a 10-minute water break, that still sucks. And let's not pretend that was a good environment. So all this that's ultimately what pisses me off. All of this protesting, all of this effort, all of this refusing to do his actual job for a situation that still sucks. When the situation here can be resolved by shortening the workday. When changing work hours so that instead of working 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours a day on a construction site surrounded by hot concrete, you can do the same thing that Florida is doing, where you eliminate illegal immigration, taking good paying construction jobs by having background checks, just requiring people to be American citizens before they take a construction job or any job, really. 1. 2, shorten the workday from 8 to 10 hours, make it 6 hours. Have a hiring spree. Hire as many people as possible to work some of these construction sites if you want to get, especially if there's going to be a quote-unquote labor shortage after you make it impossible for illegal immigrants to take those jobs. You give those jobs to American citizens. Hire more people. Shorten the workday to 6 hours. Start at 6 in the morning so that by 12 everyone can clock out and head home. People don't need to be spending all of this time in the middle of 100-degree weather. There are solutions here that give more power to American working class citizens. The reason that people like Greg Abbott don't want to talk about this, the reason that Democrats don't want to talk about this, the reason that finance monopolies and venture capitalists, banks, Wall Street speculators, big corporations, the reason they don't want to talk about this as an option, the reason that they're so focused on bringing in millions of immigrants to supplement a supposed labor shortage is because they don't want to give that much influence to American workers. They don't want to give them more power in the production process, in the process of constructing more buildings, in the process of earning more share of the wealth, of the controlling how many hours they work. They just don't want to give that much power to people who are contributing to the real economy. Because again, their real agenda is degrowth. The real agenda is to depopulate other countries in Latin America by having all of those Latin American countries send their population up here, and to have a degrowth industrial agenda in America, gutting all industries that contribute to the real economy, to material commodities. You give power to the worker, I promise you, the problem goes away. Instead, we have this crying to the federal government to intercede at the local level. Is Greg Abbott doing the proper thing here? No. Is the potential there for the state of Texas to do the right thing, as Ron DeSantis did in Florida? And again, I'm not saying I like DeSantis. I'm saying that that was the right move from a legislative point of view of doing his job as the governor of Florida, to have construction companies not hire illegal immigrants. In that specific case, for that specific issue, he did the correct thing, his job. The same thing could be done here, but it's not. In order to distract people with this theater of crying over how hot it is outside, you need to succumb to your emotions, to your sympathies for individuals in this article who may or may not exist. I'm sure they do, but that doesn't mean that this one person who gets hot once should have authority over sweeping federal interventions. So, as I said yesterday in the stream, the trend that Greg Abbott started, he needs to do again. So saying he got it right once by accident means that it's up to us, the people who actually live and breathe at the local level, and not the federal state machinery. It's up to us to push our local leaders to do the right thing, to empower working class American citizens, shorten the workday everywhere, not just in town. Like that's something you can do everywhere. Yeah, shorten the workdays, change the working hours so that you're not working in the middle of the construction site in like 100-degree heat. These are things that are entirely possible. Hell, double the night shift, have people work at night, just get floodlights. These are things that are possible. They just don't want to give that much power to the worker. And I think these kinds of executive changes, anarchistically speaking, these kinds of changes are happening anarchistically in terms of businesses being able to do them, which is why I think the National Guard has the opportunity to function as an executive level of this restructuring of state businesses, transportation, construction, energy. Texas has a lot of those. One of the last places in the country that still has manufacturing and agriculture and energy. Greg Abbott could be giving a lot of authority to the National Guard, which functions, legally speaking, in a constitutional sense, as the state militia, to push back against this federal intervention. He is not doing this, but it's possible. These are things we need to think about, because if it's not wildfires coming from Canada, if it's not rising sea levels, if it's not heat waves. It's some climate catastrophe that is being used as an excuse to stifle you, to push you back inside, to make you unable to pay your bills, to make you unable to heat your homes in the winter, to cool your homes in the summer because you're using too many resources. These theater kids in Congress have real consequences. They've been working at this for a long time, and their tactics work because they get, they unify people around this sentiment of sympathy, of emotion, thinking that uh, a federal intervention, a federal reform that enough people get behind is the solution rather than authenticating local sovereignty. So I just wanted to make that point before I head off. Sorry I couldn't be interacting in the comments because this is a pre-recording. Your boy is on that grind. I still have to head into work today. So yeah, make sure to like and subscribe for more content. All my information is down here. Follow me on Twitter at IronSunUSA. You can follow me on Telegram at HardTargetsIntel. You never know when you're going to get banned. With that being said, I'm going to head out. Y'all have a blessed rest of your evening.